Welcome back to Mass Appeal, everyone. There are so many reasons why people end relationships. However, ending a relationship can be one of the most difficult things a person might ever have to do. So joining us to help make it a little easier, we have Dr. Rob Robinson, Clinical Director, Family Care Counseling Associates. That's in Wilbraham.
Yes, sir.
And it's a very difficult decision. But the first thing is we need to end the denial and admit that it's a problem.
I mean, yeah, normally we're trying to help people piece things together about relationships, but I mean, oftentimes, you know, it does come to a point where people have to really give some thought to about, you know, ending something. You know, and it is true that you have to really be in touch with ultimately what's happening. Some people have real difficulty reading themselves into the equation, thinking about what works and what's healthy for them.
And I think everyone has that idealized vision of their relationship, and they want these ideals. But sometimes you just need to cut your losses and say, you know what, I got to move on. What are some signs that we might have to?
I mean, certainly one thing is abuse. You know, emotional or physical or psychological abuse that's ongoing. You know, and then there's the other sign is this: there's absolutely no way that the communication can work. People have tried to problem solve. Communication breaks down, easily gets flooded. There's no way to solve the problem. Fondness and admiration system in the relationship is dead, and the whole thing is filled with contempt and negative sentiment.
And that might even make a hostile environment. Some people, you know, say, stay together for the kids. But sometimes that's a hostile environment, and the healthiest thing to do is to break those chains.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is Gottman did a lot of research on relationships, and sometimes it's better to end a hostile relationship and try to work out your differences amicably on behalf of the kids, rather than having them live in an environment that's loaded with conflict, tension, and abuse.
Because that environment might come back to bite you later.
Correct.
That being said, it's very difficult, so people have to have the courage and the fortitude to make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's something that absolutely shouldn't be made impulsively, and it shouldn't be made out of anger. I think the main thing is being able to sit quietly and think through every piece of the decision and how life will be with as much detail as you possibly can, so you're making an educated decision rather than an impulsive one.
It's not something you should do after the first time, but after days, weeks, months, years, then maybe it's time to cut that cord.
No question.
You also have to anticipate your partner's reaction to it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously everybody, you know, knows that there's going to be different reactions. I mean, things can range from absolute silence in response to what you say, or, you know, sadness and crying, and then sometimes there can be rage and anger, and I think those are situations, obviously, where there's going to be an anger reaction or rage, where people have to make special allowances in terms of how they're going to go about, you know, saying something to somebody so that they're safe.
And a great tip for that, go to a neutral place, go to a public place.
Yeah, no question. I mean, this is not something you want to do in a public restaurant normally.
No.
You know, where there's going to be some kind of, you know, pretty significant reaction. I mean, it's better to choose place that's neutral, where, you know, the response can be measured, and if you need support or help, it's available to you.
You also have to avoid criticism. Make it neutral, because once again, we don't want to ruffle feathers.
That's correct. I mean, it's hard enough, I think, obviously when you have to deliver a message like that to somebody, and you don't want to wreck the person's dignity. You want to be able to make it respectful. You don't want to have contempt and criticism flooding into the conversation. It's more about, you know, what made you lead to making that decision, and why it's come time to make that decision at this point.
And you need to stick to your guns too, because it can be so difficult. And afterwards, you might want to recoil, maybe take a couple steps back.
No question about that. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, part of what happens is sometimes after you've made that decision and you separated, I mean, there are times when you might feel lonely. You're thinking back on the relationship, but it's probably best not to give in to the impulse to reconnect if that's a temporary feeling, only because then you have to kind of go through the whole cycle of ending the relationship again, and it's pretty torturous for people.
I was going to say, yeah, you don't want to go back to it, then break it off, then go back and break it off.
No question.
And in that vein, you need to give yourself a little bit of time, emotional decluttering.
Yeah, after you end something, especially if you've been in for a while, I mean, there's a period of mourning that you have to go through. I mean, it's a real loss, and you can expect, you know, a mourning reaction, a loss reaction. So you have to be patient with yourself. Sometimes it's good to seek help and advice through that period, but there is usually a period of sadness when that happens.
But at the end of the day, you need to look out for your best interest, for the best interest of your family, and make a decision. And it's not an easy decision, but sometimes it has to be made.
Absolutely, it's not an easy decision, but you sometimes have to really focus and read yourself into the equation and ask yourself, is this healthy for me?
You bring people so much light. Thank you so much
Thanks a lot,
for bringing
Seth.
it to our show today. And still to come, season